love this. Classic!
Oh my, Bridgerton? That was quite the steamy episode, wasn't it? If this is what Bridgerton's like, then, sign me up. I gotta start watching that show. I think I have a contender for new favorite episode of the season. Right now, this story and 73 Yards are duking it out in my head. This is the only other episode aside from the Stephen Moffat penned Boom that's written by someone other than the showrunner Russell T Davies. This time it's a duo of writers penning the script. Kate Herron is most well known for being the director and executive producer of the first season of that other Disney Plus time travel show, Loki. Brioni Redmond has worked on several shows, including the crime comedy Pomp Break, and also appears to be really into D&D, which explains a few references in this story.
Did you get your name from Dungeons & Dragons?
Roll for insight.
This is a very well-written episode of Doctor Who, with lots of funny dialogue and witty back and forths. I also really like the pacing. This story feels like it's written by seasoned television writers who know how to craft a story with the correct balance of plot elements, characters, and story beats to allow scenes to breathe, while also keeping things moving along at a good clip. This episode just coasts by, nice and smooth. It doesn't feel too rushed and hyperactive like some of the earlier stories this season, nor did I feel bored at any point. It felt just the right length to tell the story it wanted to tell, and what a story it was. I think this is Ncudi's best performance in the entire series, or at least his most fun to watch. This episode allows Ncuti to play to his fun-loving, flirtatious strengths.
Catching monsters, getting into scrapes, meeting handsome strangers.
He looks like he's having a blast in every scene, and feels like he's sunk comfortably into the role now. He comes off the most doctorish since Boom in this story. He's incredibly confident, clever, and perceptive in this episode, as well as holding a commanding presence in a couple standout scenes. The devilishly flirtatious scenes he shares with Rogue are a highlight, as he turns the charm up to 11 in order to find a crack in Rogue's all-business exterior. Jonathan Groff as Rogue is an immediately charming and likable character. His brooding, no-nonsense demeanor hides a deep hurt, which shows through his eyes when the Doctor probes him about his past. His resemblance to Captain Jack in both appearance and demeanor is unmissable, and it's clear RTD wanted to bring that sort of, well, roguish character back into the show's mix. Using Jack as a template for the Doctor's first male love interest is a smart move, as it uses a reliable archetype that fans have responded well to in the past. Plus, it just makes a lot of sense that the Doctor would be attracted to a man similar to his old hot friend Jack. Gatwa and Groff have immediate chemistry together, playing off of each other with subtle looks and clever jabs from the very first scene they share. The repartee between them is sharp and perceptive, as they try to feel each other out while wearing masks of cool guy suaveness. The naturally empathetic Doctor alternates between teasing, showing off, and shrewdly reading Rogue, sussing out the hidden pain the bounty hunter carries in his heart. When the two finally get past their mistrustful foreplay stage and start hanging out and opening up to each other a bit, it's genuinely heartwarming.
Do you ever wonder why keep going?
Because we have to. We have to live each day because they can't.
These two seem like they would make a great couple, having both experienced loss, thus they'd have understanding and care for each other's hurt. On top of that, they just look really good together. A power couple in the making. When they almost but didn't quite kiss, I was genuinely disappointed, and I was afraid that this episode was going to be another in a long list of empty queerbait stories. Thankfully, I was very wrong, and the two are allowed to have a full, tragic romance blossom and play out throughout the story, hitting all the notes and ending with the requisite kiss it needed to. That's why I was heartbroken to hear the Doctor say this.
Travel with me. Oh, the worlds I could show you, Rogue.
These words are basically a death sentence on Doctor Who. The formula is, if you end up in an adventure with the Doctor, and you prove your bravery, kindness, and resourcefulness, then he might invite you on board the TARDIS at the end of the story. If, however, you meet the Doctor, get into an adventure, and prove yourself to the Doctor mid-story, to the point where he starts talking about your future adventures together, then you're doomed. This series is littered with the corpses of dead almost companions. I wonder if the Kylie Minogue track was a subtle bit of foreshadowing by referencing the episode that actually featured Kylie Minogue, whose character has a similar experience of winning the Doctor's affection early before tragically sacrificing herself for the Doctor's sake at the end. Speaking of needle drops, the orchestral arrangements of Billie Eilish and Lady Gaga did not go unnoticed. This entire episode feels like it's taking place in an alternate reality rather than the true historical early 1800s. standards. An alternate reality where Earth racism doesn't exist but homophobia still does. This really is Bridgerton more than history, so I'll allow the anachronistic tunes. It fits with the rebellious and somewhat naughty vibe of the episode. The entire cast seems to be having a blast this episode. Indira Varma delivers an appropriately eccentric take on this week's villain, the Duchess, vacillating between her cover personality of the haughty socialite and the selfish, thrill-seeking, psychotic Chota alien. It's always fun to get a Game of Thrones actor on Who. Camilla Aiko as Emily steals the few scenes she's in with her completely baffled, then adorably excited reactions to Ruby's modern turns of phrase. Her latching onto and then awkwardly trying to imitate the phrase, "Yeah, okay," was a highlight.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay.
I was genuinely bummed to later discover she'd been killed off screen. Paul Foreman as Lord Barton is fine in his role, and I do enjoy the opening scene featuring his caddish confrontation with the disguised Chota, but after that he doesn't have much to do in the story and somewhat fades in with the rest of the flock of bird people. Speaking of the bird makeup, I dug it. They're not the most intimidating villains ever, and in fact they look somewhat ridiculous, really, but I like the hundreds of feathers meticulously arranged across the actors' heads. The patterning is both striking and realistic. The vertical blank eye blinks are a nice touch as well, emulating the eyelids that real birds have. Ruby also has some moments of shine. I wonder if Millie Gibson really is a Bridgerton fan, because her excitement and insatiable curiosity to be in on the drama seemed completely genuine. The scene where she was spying on the quarreling lovers through the bookshelf, like she was watching an episode of TV, was completely hilarious. Her attempts to awaken a more modern viewpoint in Emily reminded me of Sarah Jane Smith and her feminist crusades from the classic series.
Stand up for ourselves. Tell the men you're tired of working for them like slaves.
We are slaves.
Then you should set yourselves free.
I also really liked the final scene of Ruby and the Doctor together. Her concern for him after this loss, and his attempts to cover it up with laughter and talk of the next adventure feel genuine and believable. It makes his reaction when bringing up the destruction of Gallifrey and the Devil's Cord make a lot more sense in retrospect. It kind of brings his whole character into focus, really. This Doctor has not fully healed, in spite of how well-adjusted and collected he appeared to be back in the giggle. The Tennant version of the Doctor may have needed to settle down and rest to work through things, but this Doctor is still processing the catastrophic loss of his people just a couple of seasons ago, and also needs time to heal. This is the most emotional version of the Doctor I think we've ever had, so it would make sense that he would feel this loss deeply. Perhaps he puts up such a happy-go-lucky, high-energy facade to keep from having to deal with the pain. I like that Ruby sees through this facade and actually speaks up and basically gives the Doctor permission to mourn. This is what good friends do for each other, and it made me care about the relationship as well as helping to flesh it out a bit more. The Doctor's lost almost every companion he ever had, as well as his entire race, so it would make sense that he would push the pain behind him while focusing on the adventure ahead. Ruby was abandoned by her mother as a baby, and thus fears abandonment as a result. So she's very sensitive to the emotional needs of the people around her, and will do her best to break down the barriers between herself and the ones she loves, to make sure they never feel alone. They're both abandoned orphans, mourning the absence of their people, and thus they can understand and support each other. It mirrors the similarities between the Doctor and Rogue, who's also experienced loss. It's like the Doctor was able to pick up on the loss that Rogue carries around with him because he recognized the pain that he himself carries. I love the dance scene, followed by the hilarious improv session between the Doctor and Rogue. It was genuinely enchanting. The rest of the world drops away, the lighting gets low, and we're left with this long, unbroken shot of these two men dancing elegantly together, eyes locked, intriguing expressions flitting across their faces. This is show, don't tell, done perfectly. It then pivots to comedy as the Doctor starts his improv skit, but Rogue doesn't know how to yes and.
I say anything.
I love how the comedy then pivots back to the romance as Rogue drops on one knee and proposes. The way the Doctor seems genuinely shocked and flustered by it clearly shows that it brought up some painful memories for him, but also touched him deeply. I imagine he may have thought back to River Song in this moment, remembering their tumultuous and ultimately tragic time together. At one point, while we're on Rogue's ship, we see floating heads of all the Doctor's known previous incarnations parade across the screen, and I doubt I'm the only one who had to pause and squint at one fellow in particular. I thought it was a really bad picture of Christopher Eccleston for a moment, and then I realized it was Richard E. Grant, and I remembered that Scream of the Shalka exists. I admit I've never gotten around to watching this forgotten relic myself, but I am aware of it. Essentially, for Doctor Who's 40th anniversary in 2003, in lieu of having an actual show since it was cancelled in 1989 and the modern series didn't exist yet, the BBC elected to create a 6-part Flash-animated web miniseries starring Richard E. Grant as the Doctor. At the time, he was officially announced as the 9th Doctor, until the modern series premiered 2 years later and took that title for Eccleston. So I don't know where in the Doctor's timeline this guy could actually fit, but that's the reference. Even though I saw the ending coming from a mile away, I still enjoyed it. They do cheat a bit with the Ruby fake out, adding weird bird neck cracking sounds when they shouldn't be there because it's the human version of Ruby, in order to make us believe she's the alien and the real Ruby is dead. Of course, the cutaway before the death blow was a dead giveaway that Ruby would be fine, but I still appreciated the Doctor's mourning of her loss, followed by him going into revenge mode with this chilling declaration.
How long did we live for?
Children? They have a lifespan of 600 years.
Good. Good. It's a long time to suffer.
This reminds me of the Doctor's vengeful punishment of the family of blood, after they put him in a particularly bad mood. I like it when the Doctor goes cold vengeance mode, as he does become genuinely intimidating, since we know what he's capable of, and how much the villains rely on the Doctor's moral code to survive for even as long as they do manage to. As a matter of fact, these villains in general remind me a lot of the Family of Blood. Similar power, similar sadistic enjoyment in causing havoc with the poor locals. The big thing that sets them apart from the Family of Blood is the cosplay element, which is a pretty cool and unique idea to add. While body snatchers and shapeshifters are a fairly common occurrence on Who, adding the cosplay element is a fun new twist on a fairly familiar monster type. Doctor Who, as well as other fantasy and sci-fi franchises, have a huge cosplay scene, so it's fun to see elements of that culture mixed into the Doctor Who episode itself. The idea of aliens wearing us like costumes just for the fun of it is horrifying. These villains just seem like pure, unadulterated thrill seekers. A bunch of sadistic hedonists let loose on our poor unsuspecting planet. The dehydrated husk-like state the victims are left in is very reminiscent of the even more ghastly-looking deaths that occur in the classic story Planet of Evil. Side note, it was nice to finally see a version of Carla that actually loves Ruby make another appearance. I'd say that's now about 50-50 on the amount of scenes we've had of Carla loving Ruby versus alternate reality Carla not caring about her. My only real critique of this episode is that I saw some of the twists coming from a mile away. I knew Ruby wasn't really dead, but playing as the alien. I figured the Doctor would trap her, and then Rogue would have to tragically sacrifice himself to save her. Like I said, I know the formula. I swear, I even knew that Rogue would use the kiss to steal the trigger. But I didn't care, fortunately, because the show had done the work to make me care about the relationship between the Doctor and Ruby, and the blossoming relationship between the Doctor and Rogue. It still hits to watch a tragedy that you know the inevitable ending of, but the characters don't play out right in front of you. The show did good, paying off Chekhov's lips with a beautiful, bittersweet kiss, before ripping our hearts out by stealing away everyone's new favorite character. His final words of "find me," ringing in hours in the Doctor's ears, promising a worthwhile seasons-long quest to reunite the two.
Find me.
I think this hit even harder the second time I watched it, because I knew it was coming, and I mourned the loss of this fun pair throughout the episode. The Doctor finding Rogue's ring in his pocket is the perfect note to end on, a spark of hope in an otherwise tragic tale. I think this was a great episode of Doctor Who, and probably my favorite so far. As much as I loved 73 Yards, the absence of the Doctor in that story was felt. This story gives Ncuti the broadest range of emotions to play with, from easygoing to flirtatious, commanding to heartbroken, vulnerable to dangerous. And it seems like they really just let him cut loose this episode, to excellent results. Ncuti is the Doctor in this story, and not just an amalgamation of familiar tics and quirks, but his own unique spin on the character. I like all the Doctors to some degree, but some of them definitely stand out more than others. You know, have that sort of star power about them. And I feel like Ncuti fits into that category. He's rapidly becoming one of my favorite Doctors ever. And I don't just say that every time a new Doctor gets rolled out. Now, am I being sarcastic or serious about that statement? Stay tuned for the next several years to find out. I like the setting of the story, and the direction and cinematography feel clean and warm. This episode feels tightly written, confident, and fun, while also harboring a deep emotional core. Equal parts romance and tragedy, loss and hope. I think this is my favorite because, like 73, this connects on a deep emotional level, one that I could relate to. This season is turning out to be one of the most emotionally open seasons of Doctor Who ever, and that's starting to intrigue me. I crave deep emotional moments that land, especially in finales. So I'm hoping for and expecting some major waterworks in the next couple of weeks. Some people have made fun of the fact that the Doctor cries a lot this season, and that could get tiresome if it's done too often. But I appreciate that the show is trying to go there so often, swinging for the fences with big emotional climaxes. Not every one of them lands, like the unfortunately tacked-on feeling final scene of last week's episode, but when it does land, it hits hard. I didn't cry watching Ncuti mourn the stupid space races, but I'm not ashamed to admit that I did shed a tear watching the Doctor struggle with the unsolvable riddle of either banishing his best friend forever or letting the Earth die, and it got to me even more when he lost Rogue. I think it's awesome that we're getting a male hero who cries and shows his emotions so openly, as I think he's a good role model for young men and boys, pushing back against the toxic masculinity and emotionally repressed machismo that myself and all men are raised with to some degree. The Doctor openly weeps in the face of tragedy, but he still saves everyone and stands up to the bullies, so why is that wrong? This was a beautiful, brave, funny, heartbreaking, charming as fuck episode of television, and I unsurprisingly give it an A. Next week, it looks like we are finally getting an answer to the seasons-long Susan Twist mystery.
Everywhere I land, a woman appears.
In every dream I'm there.
Is Susan Twist the one who waits? Is Susan Twist the Rani? Is Susan Twist Sutek? Is Susan Twist Omega? Is Susan Twist the Black Guardian? Is Susan Twist the Valiard? Is Susan Twist Romana? Is Susan Twist the Trickster? Is Susan Twist Rassilon? Is Susan Twist Tecteun? Is Susan Twist the Other? Is Susan Twist the Doctor? Is Susan Twist Ruby? Is Susan Twist Ruby's mother? Is Susan Twist Susan? Ooh, okay. I have some wild theories that I've already gone into a little bit in the past story that I will be making some explainer videos about this coming week. We'll see how many explainer videos I'm able to get through before the secret is revealed and thus rendering them moot, but I have one that's cooking and it's going to come out in just a few days, so look out for that. And then I'll see you after that for the next episode review, the first part of what I assume is going to be a two-part finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday. So, as always, and until next time, Kay, signing out.